Hello and welcome to episode 2 of Shall We Sing a Song for You, a brand new podcast that combines two of the nation's favourite pastimes, football and music, brought to you in partnership with Cherry Red Records. I'm Alan Parry, a veteran of 50 years behind a microphone, but strictly as a commentator, I should add, definitely not as a singer. Unlike my co-host Gareth Ainsworth, ex-player, successful manager and lead vocalist in rock band The Cold-Blooded Hearts. Now, if you missed episode 1, let me tell you that this podcast series is all about star names from the world of football who love their music and star names from the world of music who love their football. Gaz here was in his element in episode 1 because our star guest was Stuart Pearce, who had a fantastic football career, of course, but is also a great lover of punk rock. I'm not sure that same passion for punk rock will apply to our star guest here in episode 2. He's a man who enjoyed a stellar career as a player with Nottingham Forest and later as manager as them as well, of course, and with some of the biggest clubs in England and Scotland. So a very warm welcome to Martin O'Neill. Martin, the theme of the podcast, as I've said, is football and music. I'm sure everyone listening knows all about your football career. What they might not know was that you actually appeared singing on a record that got to a very respectable place in the pop music charts some years ago.
Yes, it did. Yes. Do you want me to tell you?
Yes, please.
Oh, gosh.
I know you will anyway.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you very much for putting me on the programme. And that's nice. Thank you, Gareth. I'm sure it was really up to you. Parry would have me as last guest going on. But anyway, so it was Nottingham Forest, so way back in 1978, going strongly. Looks as if we might win the league, and in the League Cup final, possibility of even completing a treble, which would have been amazing, really, because we had just got promotion into what would be now known as the Premier League, called the First Division in those days. Anyway, unbelievably, Brian Clough allowed us to have a song. The way that England would have had a song for their World Cup and things like this here. So ours was, one of those, which was called "You've Got the Whole World in Your Hands," and it was. Well, it wasn't brilliant, but the singing was
to the chart.
The singing wasn't brilliant, yes, and every copy that was bought in around the Trent end of Nottingham. So we got to number 15, and it was a group. We were backed up by a group called Paper Lace, and Paper Lace had a couple of big hits about 4 or 5 years earlier called "Billy Don't Be a Hero" and "The Night Chicago Died." They were actually a Nottingham band, and but their careers, I think, were just faltering at that stage. So I think they thought that the best thing to do would be to hang on to the coattails of an aspiring football club going very strongly in the league and might have a hit. And we got into the charts. We did the song. I think Brian Clough was even there when we did the song. That I'm not sure about, but he certainly wasn't against the idea, which, as I said earlier, surprised us.
Yeah.
And but anyway, we went straight in at number 15, and I think straight out again. So in those days, but we had a hit, and we were up there.
He's done a lot more than I've ever done, Face. So
well, there you are.
That kills my career.
And I'm still living on the royalties.
Top of the
I'm not.
Top of the pops.
Yeah, we got on. I think that what we did do, we recorded the thing, and we did. I think that we were the last song on Top of the Pops as the writing is going up. We were on for a couple of minutes or something.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Was it just everyone singing the chorus, or did any player have?
No. What we did. Okay, so there was a line. I might as well tell you. It was there's Robbo and Tony.
John Robertson,
Tony Woodcock.
Yeah.
Johnny and Rob and Martin O'Neill, Archie the Gemmell all over the field. It's one of those things. And then what they would do, obviously we wouldn't be singing that,
no,
but they would come to you and you had to have a kind of a semi-smile on it to the camera. Hello, that. It was pathetic.
I'm sure you will agree you were a better footballer than a singer anyway.
No.
But things could have changed and turned out differently for you in the early days of your career. I know you studied law at University in Belfast. We'll come to that later. But also, before I think soccer, if you want to make the distinction, became your number one sport, you played Gaelic football.
Yeah.
That looks pretty rough.
Well, yes, it can be rough. Yes, there's a kind of a cross between soccer and rugby in that sense, you know. So I think you have to have a bit of beef about, you know, to play the game even at a young age. So I was pretty good at it, you know, pretty agile and enjoyed it immensely because I really came from a Gaelic background. You know, my father was one of the co-founders of the local Gaelic football team in our village, and my brothers, who were very, very good players, older brothers, played for the county, and 1 year County Derry got to the All-Ireland final. My younger brother was 18, I was 6 at the time, and my mother took me to the game, you know, and so I loved it. But I think soccer, but the minute that I think that I saw first of all in someone else's television. We didn't have a TV in 1960, but I saw the European Cup final between Real Madrid and Eintracht Frankfurt, and I was absolutely stricken. You know, this is it. This is black and white TV at Hampden Park. Puska scored 4, De Stefano scored 3. Frankfurt took the lead early on in the game, and Real Madrid went for, this was 1960, so that would have been their 5th consecutive European Cup.
So, man, did you play football, soccer at school, or was it just Gaelic?
Essentially Gaelic. The first time I actually played, my family moved up. I was a boarder obviously at a boarding school in Derry City for 5 years, from 11 years of age to 16. Then my family moved up to Belfast, where I became a day boy in another grammar school, which was great for me because it meant I was able to go out and join a youth team. So the very first time I ever played soccer on a grass pitch was when I was 16.
16?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Think of that now with all the academies and all the ones coming up.
16, yeah.
That's incredible.
And I never did the academy, believe it or not, because within 2 years I was playing for a team called Distillery. We actually won the Irish Cup, and as a consequence of winning the Irish Cup, it got us into what was called in those days the European Cup Winners' Cup. And we were drawn against, unbelievably, Barcelona.
Wow!
Yeah, and I scored a goal against, and I only found out a couple of years ago that the goal I scored, which gave me great traction, not just locally but obviously nationally, and then the English people getting to know about it, was against Pepe Reina's father. You know, the goalkeeper.
Oh my word!
Against it, or was it his grandfather? Or was it his great grandfather? I'm not exactly sure, but it was.
I've just found out the Maradona scored against Barcelona.
Yeah, scored a goal against Barcelona. Yeah, we lost.
That is incredible, by the way.
Scored, and within 3 weeks. So what happened? Obviously, gave me a bit of traction. I think it was about 2 weeks later, Northern Ireland were playing in Belfast, an international game against Russia. And funnily enough, it was the last game they would play for about 4 years because of the Troubles. And a couple of players pulled out of the squad through injury. And Terry Neal, who became the Arsenal manager, but at that time was the player manager of Hull City and also the player manager of Northern Ireland. He brought me into the squad. So I have a lot to thank him for. Wow. I played for 20 minutes, and the Nottingham Forest manager was there. And the following week, I became a professional player.
Wow.
Yeah.
So Gaelic football took a back seat for the moment anyway. Yeah. The law course took a back seat as well. You joined Nottingham Forest, where I think it's fair to say you had a slightly strange relationship with the manager at the time, Mr. Brian Clough.
Well, that's true, but he didn't come immediately. He did not send me.
No.
You know. So I came. I was a student on a Tuesday night and a professional player on the Wednesday night with Nottingham Forest. And I got off to a really great start. Within 3 weeks, I was in the first team, scored against West Bromwich Albion on my debut, came on as a sub. A couple of weeks later at Old Trafford, and I don't remember the date, the 4th of December 1971. And warming up, was told by Matt Gillies, the manager, get warmed up, you're coming on here to the game. And as I warm up at Old Trafford, it's about 4:20, and it's December, and the lights are shining now. That's dark, and it was the most amazing thing. And I'm on against Bobby Charlton, Dennis Law, and George Best, all in the team. And
the Holy Trinity.
Yeah. And I pick up the ball just inside our own half or their half.
You don't remember it that well then?
Yeah. I run past Bobby Charlton, who wasn't difficult at that time because he was quite old.
On.
And then I slashed it into the net against Alex Stepney. And I scored the goal. And then I thought, what an easy game this is.
No way.
Unfortunately, I had a bad spell, which lasted about 4.5 years.
So when did Cloughy come in at Forest?
Cloughy came in 1975. And
can you remember his first talk to the players?
Absolutely. Yeah, you couldn't forget it. So he walked in, and we knew he was becoming the manager because he had been sacked by Leeds United a couple of months earlier.
Oh yeah.
And he had, well, it was never going to work for him because no matter how big he was, and he was a great manager and big news as well too, he told the Leeds United team that they had cheated. They had won the league by cheating, and they should throw their medals in the bin. And they said this here, So you can imagine Johnny Giles and Billy Bremner and Alan Clark and
Norman Hunter
saying, excuse me, we cheated. And Leeds were the best team in the country at the time, honestly, better than Liverpool at that stage. And so he lasted 44 days, got sacked, wasn't doing anything at the time, and Forrest, we took him, he became our manager, and he came in on a Monday morning. It was really cold, January morning, and John Robertson, my great pal John Robertson, great player at the time, saw this right in front of him. If Brian Clough was walking into the dressing room like this, John Robertson is right in front there, in straight in front of him. I'm a wee bit to John's left, so I don't see him walking immediately in, but he's taking the coat half off. He just puts it in a thing. He says, right, okay. And the only two players he would have known with all the people in the dressing room would have been Sammy Chapman, who was our captain, and a fellow called Barry Butlin, who had been at Derby with him. The rest of us, he would have no idea who we were, And he just said something, excuse me if he said to Sammy, cold, isn't it? Freeze the brass monkey, all that type of stuff, right? And so he just stepped in, and his whole character just pervaded the dressing room. That, not just that moment, but for the rest of time, incredible.
You had a few clashes with him, didn't you?
Yeah. We had a difference of opinion in my ability because I used to think I was brilliant and he didn't, So I kind of had to. It was one of those where I felt as if you're always trying to prove him wrong rather than prove him right. Listen, if he genuinely thought that that was the best or the way to get the best out of me, well, so be it. I didn't think it was, but I'm not going to argue.
What was the worst thing he ever said or did?
Well, to me?
Yeah.
Oh, the worst thing. The worst thing. I don't think verbally you'd ever get too worried about it. I don't think that the players nowadays. And it'd be interesting to hear Gareth, who is a couple of generations apart from me, how he would have dealt with players. And I think from the news coming through, particularly at Wickham, would have been fantastic how he dealt with the players. But I think I'm not so sure that the younger player now would be able to deal with this sort of criticism that could be thrown at you at any given minute, And I might have received more than most at the end of the day. And sometimes when I look at the videos, I think, he's probably right.
We had Stuart Pearce on the last one, and what Stuart said was when Stuart got selected for the England squad, Cloughy actually sat him down and said the words, "You're not good enough, F off."
He did not, did he?
Yeah, and Stuart said that gave him, but Brown was being really clever, giving the motivation to be even better, to prove him wrong. And we said that nowadays you'd struggle with the new generation of players. They wouldn't be able to take it. So that's some of the stuff to how he motivated you guys.
Yes, that's right. I tell you what it did do. You remember the moments where he gave you big praise, praise in front of the rest of the players, and that was really worth it. And like a European Cup final when I'm playing, and it comes in at half time, and he just says to me, this was the second European Cup final, and he said, "Hey son, you're playing brilliantly out there. And fantastic. Yeah. So I've waited all these years. We might as well wait to the European Cup final for him to praise you. But it was worth it. So I can't say every single minute was every day with him was definitely an experience. There's no question about it. But listen, he was a phenomenal manager.
First time I ever met him, I was covering a Nottingham Forest game. I think they were playing Liverpool, actually, at the old City Ground for Radio 2, BBC Radio as it was. And as a commentator, I like to hang around in the dressing room corridor to pick up any snippet of information about the team that day. It's 2:30, literally, and there's no sign of Clough. And then, of course, the door swings open, the familiar green jersey, the squash racket under his arm. I introduce myself. Come into the dressing room, young man. I go in. The players are all there, ready. They've done the warm-up, ready for the big game. And he goes, Shilton, take his coat off him. Go and get him a cup of tea. I think, this is Peter Shilton.
30 minutes before kick-off.
Yeah.
So it was certainly unusual, wasn't it?
Oh, it was. It was exactly that when he signed Trevor Francis. Trevor being the first £1 million player in the world. And so he signed him, and I don't think he signed in time for their first Saturday game that we had, but he had Trevor making the tea for the rest of us in the dressing room at the time. And what hadn't realised is that the previous day when Trevor had signed the contract, that a couple of the press guys were asking him, Trevor, when do you expect to make your debut? And Clough intervened by saying, when I pick him. As if to say he's just another lad. Francis was a great player, but, listen, he was...
Is it true before one of the European Cup finals, because there were two, weren't there, that he took the players or allowed the players to go out and have a few beers the night before? It seems an incredible thing in, modern terms.
No, there were two particular finals that we had. We had a League Cup final against Southampton, and we'd gone down the night before, stayed in a hotel in Cockfosters in North London. And generally speaking, if we get down there for around about 9 o'clock, it might be tea and a sandwich, and then up the stairs, because we got Wembley the next day, and reasonably important game like League Cup final. And so we were told to throw the bags in the room and come down the stairs. And there's the big hearth at this particular hotel called the West Lodge Park, I think. And so as we arrived down there, Clough and Taylor both waiting for us with champagne and orange juice. So to drink champagne and orange juice, which is like very fizzy anyway for a start, never mind the night before. So we don't look...
Looks fizzy.
We don't sit... Brilliant. Brilliant. See, it just shows you how often I drink it.
Once the music connected, there was a band called Bucks.
I know that.
Yeah.
I know they were making your mind up.
Oh, Martin.
I don't know these things.
You've got to get up early in the morning to...
I know. Well, so orange and champagne. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Bucksfield, I'm glad you told me that. I'd forgotten about that. So, sorry, but so, what they want to do then is they want to, I think it was an idea of trying to relax us before the game. But, so this was about 9:15, 9:30. So at 11:30, we're still drinking this stuff. And they've already been telling their stories of their early days at Hartlepool and at Derby County and stuff like that. And Archie Gamble said, listen, boss, we've got a reasonably important game tomorrow, like, do you think? And Taylor said, you stay there, you spoil sport. So we carried Tony Woodcock up the stairs. We actually took Tony Woodcock because his head was light. And the next morning at 11 o'clock, we're going round the grounds of the hotel as we would do a normal walk and still trying to get Tony back into proper contention.
Oh, he played, presumably.
He played. He sobered up in the second half and scored a couple. He was brilliant. But we played badly in the first half in the game. Hardly surprising. We're 1-0 down in the game, and Clough, who was going to take no responsibility whatsoever for last night, just tore into us at half-time and said, don't you dare blame last night on this performance. You get out and play. Went out and we scored. We won 3-2 eventually in the game, but we had 2 other goals disallowed. Terrific. But and so we won. And which is always the important thing. You got to win. Because, anyway, in the European Cup final, the night, the second European Cup final, we're in Madrid. And we are staying in a hotel in the I would say about 30 kilometres outside Madrid, a wee bit too far. So we hadn't done any scouting about where there might be a training pitch. So Clough asked the couple of the boys who worked in the hotel where there might be a pitch. So we got onto the bus and we drove to this area of a little flat area. So out we go, and Clough wants to play in the game as well too. So it's like about a 7-a-side or whatever it is. And so suddenly we're playing the game. It's not just a practice thing. It's full blooded. This is 24 hours before the European Cup final. And then suddenly it's hailstones, there's thunder and lightning come around. But amazingly, in Spain, in Madrid at that particular time, this is at the end of May, thunder and lightning, hailstones, definitely like ping pong balls, definitely big one. Is he going to stop the game? No, not at all. We play through this. We play through the thunder and lightning and stuff like this here, the lightning. And we decided, we make a pact, the two captains, and they just let him win the game, and then we can get off, and we'll, seriously. And so
was he a good player?
He was a great goal scorer, but he had done his knee in a way back. That's what eventually stopped him from playing anymore. Okay. But he played out in he couldn't play in a big game, a big full-size five-a-side, and he would play wide left. As the ball would come to him, he'd swing it in with his right foot.
Oh, so inverted wingers back in the 1970s.
A bit like myself. I did my cruciate in, and then when I took over the lads at Wickham, I sometimes wore maybe a big thing just to say I played the game, but I know big that, and all the players were saying, Gaffer, and I couldn't run because my knee is cropped, and they said, "Oh, Gaffer, did you ever play football?" So I decided the best thing to do is just don't play at all. And that was a wee bit like Clough, you just kept swinging balls in. Anyway, the point about it is this here, that the bus driver, who is experiencing all this from the comfort of his bus, the bus is pulled up alongside it, and he can't believe it. And he absolutely can't believe. So he can't wait to get back to tell a couple of the workforce down there about what has happened. And as they're serving the meal that night, some of the servers come up and say, "Your boss, he mad." Absolutely local. But we won the final against Kevin Keegan's Hamburg the following day.
One thing's always fascinated me. Everyone knows that Clough was a great motivator. Was he a good tactician as well?
He would know tactics, absolutely. And this idea that that's all he did was motivate is just nonsense, real nonsense. He knew the game inside out for a start. Never used any note paper in those days. His memory. I'm not saying that I left in 1981, and obviously he was starting to drink heavily much time after that there, but when I was there for the years that I was with him, he was really sharp. He's right on it. Didn't need a note. He could tell you. I remember one of the days that he praised me in the game is that he remembered everything, absolutely everything. So you didn't have to half time comes a match and you pick your incidents up that you probably didn't even remember yourself when you were playing in the game. And he once said, I remember I played in front of Viv Anderson, Viv was the first black player to play for England. Yeah. Viv, galloping Viv, really good player, Viv. Unfortunately, Viv did, he was one of those where he needed to get his confidence up in games because he didn't want the ball rolled out to him from Peter Shilton. He wanted to make a tackle first. And I said, "That's not any good to me, man, because I need to get the ball." And I said, "Viv, you got to get the ball, get Shilton to roll it out to you rather than going down left." And Viv used to go, "Oh, no, I have to make a tackle." Anyway, so we come in and during this particular game, Viv's lost the ball going forward. And I've spotted it, and I've raced back about 60 yards, and I've intervened and stopped the thing. We score a goal, must have been at least 2 minutes after that. And so Clough comes in and said, "You scored that goal, son, to me. You scored that goal." I said, "No, you scored that goal because you stopped that move up there for us to get the ball back." And fully 2 minutes. So in his mind, those type of things give you an enormous lift, an enormous lift that he would remember a tackle that you made fully 2 minutes before we would score a goal. and the ball probably went out of play at the end of it, and then it would have been a throw into the opposition, and then we would get it back. 2 minutes later we score, but he had remembered that was really what started.
That's good.
Did he ever say to you, when you stopped playing, you should go into management?
No, he didn't say that. Peter Taylor did. I saw Peter Taylor once, and it was the kindest thing Peter Taylor said to me. He said, I met him in the streets of Nottingham one day, Peter and I. Well, Peter and I didn't get on too well either, but which only leads me to the point I didn't get on too well with many people.
Back in anger.
No, I was a cantankerous git. So anyway, and I only see that about myself now, and so some of the players that I've disliked in my management time have only reminded me of me. That's the point. That's why I dislike them, completely. But no, it was Peter Taylor. And Peter Taylor said one day, man, and I was trying to avoid him. I saw him from a distance, and he had retired from the game at the time. He lived in the Nottingham area, but he was in the town of Nottingham at the time. And by chance I saw him, and I really wanted not to see him at all, because I'd not spoken to him since I left Forest. And he said, hey, you come here. And he was still like one of the teachers, oh yeah, what is it? And he said, oh, you disappoint me. He said, I thought you would have gone into management. I really did think you would have done that. He said, no, I thought you had it. He said, and you 2 great teachers, didn't you? Brian and myself. He said, obviously praising himself. But, and that really did, it was nice of him to say that, I must admit. And that was the first moment I'd really thought about it. And I went home then after that and started to write pen letters to clubs who hadn't a manager at the time.
Actually, it's not a very well-known fact. I know you ended up at Wycombe Wanderers and did a brilliant job, got them from non-league into the Football League. You were turned down the first time you applied for the job, weren't you?
Yeah, that's right. Well, I'd got to know you a little bit at that time, isn't it? So I applied for the Wycombe job about 2 years before that. So, and I'd never been to Wycombe before, so I drove down from Nottingham, and the interview was on a Sunday morning at the old Lokes Park, at the Lokes Park. And I must admit, I loved that ground. And even with the slope, I used to think if they could level it, because it was in the side of the town, it was great. Yeah, right. But anyway, so I go and do the interview, and the interviewer was Brian Lee. Brian Lee, and I didn't know that Ivor was actually in the room.
That's Ivor Biggs who became the chairman.
I apologise, Ivor Biggs. I'm sorry, absolutely. And Ivor was in the room. Anyway, I applied for the job. I must have done a really brilliant interview because I didn't get it, and I didn't get the job. So then, fast forward a couple of, and I met Alan down just by chance. I was down doing a bit of radio work for Norwich City. Were playing against Liverpool in Norwich at Carrow Road, and I ran into Alan, and he said, I thought you might have applied for the job this time round because the manager's gone. Yeah. And I said, I didn't even know it was available. And he said, would you have any interest? I said, well, I didn't get it the last time, so there's nothing lost. So Alan said, but they're doing interviews as we speak at this minute. And he said that I'll make a phone call to Ivor. They may have made their minds up at this minute, but if they haven't, I'll put your hat in. So I owe that to Alan. But then I did get a call. There were no mobiles in those days. I don't remember them anyway. No, if they were about 3 foot long.
You never answered yours anyway.
Thank you. And I would have done for this one. And then it was Kenny Swain. So I got a phone call. I think this was the order of events. That Sunday night, by the time I got home, I think Ivor called me, or I'd given Alan his number, or my number, and Mr. Beeks called me and he said, listen, I'm really, really sorry, but we've given the job to Mr. Swain, Kenny Swain at the time, and he said, I'm really, really sorry. I said, well, I said, it's my fault, I put it in too late, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so Kenny the following morning went home, turned it down. He hadn't taken the job. Then he decided to stay on at Crewe with Dario Grady. Yeah. And then Ivor gave me the call, probably probably pressed by AP, and I got the interview this time because I was the only one in for it.
Which direction do you think your life would have gone in had you not made that start?
Had he not met you?
That's put it that way. So put it that way. That's a very good question. I really no idea.
Were you working in the insurance industry?
I was doing pensions, and John Robertson was working with me at the time, and doing these things. Well, it wasn't something that I was, madly keen on, but I was doing that work. It was paid, but I didn't. I wasn't any good in the field, by buying and selling. I wouldn't have been any good, I hardly
only players, Martin.
Didn't know the products. What?
Only players, yeah. You can buy and sell players.
I buy and sell players, absolutely. And so what happened here was that then, interestingly, the area manager of Nottingham left to get promoted to go to, I think it was to Birmingham, and the fellow from the group put me in charge. I did an interview and put me in charge, and he said, I think you should be the manager of the Nottingham group. And I said, well, I haven't sold a pension policy here. He said, no, it's nothing to do with what you can sell. He said, there are really good salesmen here, but you could manage the group, which was a nice boost. And so I managed a group of people in a subject I knew nothing about. And then I felt, well, at least if I was in football, at least I have an idea of what I might be talking about.
So Gaelic football and the insurance industry both lost an outstanding man who went on to manage in the top tiers: Leicester, Aston Villa, Celtic. You went back to Forest as manager a few years later, didn't you? And you only lasted for 5 months. It seemed like a marriage made in heaven at the time.
Yeah, well, I had, fun enough, I'd turned down the job a couple of times, turned to stay at Wycombe when Brian Clough got eventually left the football club. But that was in 1993, and I had a chance then to manage it. At that time, we'd just got promotion into the Football League, and I kind of obviously I loved Wycombe, so I really probably wanted to stay. Following Brian Clough would have been difficult anyway at that stage. They'd just been relegated. He had gone, and that would have been difficult. But that wasn't my major concern about it. It was really to do with I loved the football club, and I thought that another year, at least for us to establish ourselves in the Football League, would be fine, and there would be jobs coming up at some stage or another. So this is honestly, Gareth, I never made, consciously, I never made any thoughts about having a football club as a stepping stone. I never thought. I actually fell in love with the clubs that I was with. Yeah. So anyway, so fast forward as you talking about to Nottingham Forest, and I had turned it down the previous year, and I was sat around the table, and I was being interviewed in a place in Warwickshire, and almost like the same thing happened the following year, almost exactly to the day. It was a January time. They sacked the manager. The first manager was Warburton, and then it was the Spanish manager, I think. Anyway, so, and this time John Robertson said, I said, Martin, I think that you should take the job this time. So I spoke to Mr. Marinakis, and he said, listen, don't worry about this season. It was January time. It was about halfway through January. And he said, don't worry about it this season. In the summertime, supply with enough players here and we'll try and get promotion. I said, that's all I need. Just need the time for... and if I don't go up, I just sign for the year and a half and then pass it on to someone else. That's the only time I wanted. So anyway, we didn't move any. We were ninth when I think it was ninth, and I think we finished ninth or whatever it was. So, and it was 19 games, the last 3 of which we won. We won the last 3, but it was all a charge too late,
Yeah.
But anyway, I was looking forward to the pre-season, and so I'd spent some time out in Athens with the owner. I thought that's fine. She came back, did a week of pre-season, 1 week of pre-season, and at the end of that week, I must admit, I made the week hard for them because I felt, there's nothing wrong with some hard training, and I made it hard. It was pretty difficult. So we started on the Monday. I did the hills. I did these things, and the players were moaning a wee bit, but at the end of the day, saying, "Oh, we needed this." So the usual thing, about players, and they get you the boot, and anyway, so we'd finished that morning. We came back down to the city ground, and the director of football, who was also a Greek fellow as well too, who was an ex-swimming instructor, he said, "Would you come into the room?" And I went into the room, and there was about 3 of them gathered in there, and he said, "Well, the way you run the football club is not the way we want it run," which I'm not sure what it meant. So
swimming, I think.
A bit more swimming. I said, "Well, I should have said I should have said I can't swim," which I can. And but I said I can.
Any thoughts about management,
whatever
future?
No. So what it was, this is the interesting thing. So anyway, I thought, well, that's the end. Fine, no problem. And I didn't even listen to a reason. If somebody's made their mind up, that's it. Well, obviously, I was peeved about it, really peeved. So I went back into the little room at the city ground. I had to call in some of my cohorts to tell them they're no longer working, So I assumed that they were going at the same time. And a player, I'm in there 24 minutes. I think I probably made a call to the wife, although Geraldine always said that she'd be the last one to know about these things. I'm sure I called her and said, "Listen, I'll be home a wee bit earlier than you think." And I was 24 minutes. So I got a knock on the door. One of the players that I liked at the club said, "Oh, Gaffer," he said, "I'm really sorry, but they've." He said, "You must not be here," and he said, "Because they've just announced the new manager."
Oh my God!
Oh, nice one.
24 minutes. Allow me at least to get out of the room, and maybe get home. And not that. Listen, we know they get.
I know they get. Yeah,
but just
come on, give us
25.
Let's get out of the car park.
Give us 25. Absolutely, seriously, I'm actually still there. One of the players come in to tell me, not a problem. Oh, seriously, that's it. That's absolutely fine. Where I did get obviously peeved about losing the job, and secondly, the new manager comes in, and there's 15 players foisted on him in his first 12 days or 14 days at the time. So he takes them away pre-season, and so he gets at least the chance to maybe change a few. And I'm not saying all of them were his choices, but at least it's a new group of players.
In a dressing room. That is amazing.
It's called life. Yeah.
But it's amazing in a dressing room when you do get, just on that point, an influx of new players does enough change the dynamics of a dressing room at times, and you can get different results. Different, absolutely.
Absolutely. Not necessarily for the better.
No, just a few faces. Sometimes,
even just getting some, and at least having a few weeks pre-season. We had already arranged to be going away to somewhere in Spain for a week, and that would have been nice just to get to know some new players and actually some of the other players that you might know. I was there from halfway through January, and that was, so 5 months.
Just going back to your time at Celtic, which must have been one of the most enjoyable periods of your management career. Clough was known as Old Big Head. Mm-hmm. You came up in the final, didn't you? A European final against another man who's not known for his modesty in Jose Mourinho. Mm-hmm. What did you think of him?
That was the UEFA Cup final 2003. We'd beaten Blackburn Rovers in an earlier round over 2 matches. Blackburn were flying at the time under Graham Souness, and then quarterfinals were drawn against Liverpool. We knocked Liverpool out over the 2 games, draw at our place. We won 2-0 at Anfield. In the semi-final, we beat Boavista, and we're in the final now in Seville. We've 75,000 Celtic fans came to the game. Not all, obviously, with tickets because we're holding 50,000. But it was Porto. We played Porto, and it was Jose Mourinho. It was in the early days of Jose, at the time, and obviously. Really fine team. The same team that beat us in extra time that night went on to win the Champions League the following year. Yeah. Porto won the. So, Josie is all the things that you would know. If the world ended tomorrow, I would consider Jose Mourinho a phenomenal manager, fantastic manager. Defensively, that's what he wanted to do, trying to shut up shop. He had. I think that his couple of years at Porto obviously defined him. He was terrific. But then he goes to Chelsea and does brilliantly there at Chelsea, and he's competing at that time with Manchester United. So great, honestly, great.
He's known for sort of the mental side, the mind games. Did you see them when he was at Porto?
Oh, you could have foretold what was going to happen. Yeah. Absolutely. The players, they're great players. They had Deco, they had all these particular players playing for them. Every single time they got touched, they were down. The referee was terrible. He was just not capable of dealing with the game. He was too young. He should not have been managing the game. Every time Porto scored a goal, they beat us 3-2. They went off to Porto to celebrate, and they came back about 25 minutes later. Yeah, it really is. I mean, it sounds like it's really. But you could see it. But it's part of the game.
The game management.
It's the game.
Yeah.
We're into extra time. In the match, we could, we played every bit as well as they did in the match. It could have gone either way. The game, we have a man sent off in extra time, so it's going to look as if it's going to go to penalties. They score 11 against 10. The conditions that night was red hot, absolutely red hot, even at that time of the evening, and they've won. So goalkeeper Victor Bailly comes to grab a ball with about 6 minutes left of extra time, and comes and he grabs it and he goes down, and then he goes down, and I said, I know what's going to happen. He's going to stay down here all night. He's going to stay down, and he stayed down for over 4 minutes. They brought on half the Porto doctors. There was about 12 of them, and I thought he was going to be airlifted by helicopter into the nearest hospital, and then realising that he didn't know which part of the body that he should be holding on to. He didn't. It was his face, it was his ankle. It's shocking, absolute. To quote my great words, shocking, and it was. And lay down, and the referee blew up almost as he is.
Now, as we keep saying, the whole theme of Shall We Sing a Song for You is football and music. And I know that Gaz is dying to ask you a few questions about.
Yeah, we've touched on a few things already. Yeah. One big thing I want to know, and this is probably off script here, AP, but Nottingham, it's got a famous rock venue called the Rock City. Yeah. Did you ever go?
It wasn't called Rock City in my early days. Okay. It was another venue. Yes, I wasn't, but it was when Rock City appeared afterwards, but I know exactly where it is, and it was one of those, it was a venue that for us team, when we were going strongly at the time, we would get invitations to go to certain functions, as a team.
And there was bands playing?
And bands were playing, absolutely, but not in terms of Rock City.
Okay, no.
Absolutely, that came afterwards,
I remember, I'm a big rocker myself, obviously, Martin, and I've been there a couple of times, but I just wanted to know how far back it had gone, So on the podcast, we're trying to delve in a little bit into people's musical tastes and musical history that they've got. And I got a couple of questions to ask you. So we're asking each guest the first record you bought or the first record you wish you'd have bought. So if your first record is quite embarrassing, which one do you wish you'd have bought?
No. Well, first of all, I thought you were going to ask which record did I ever hear. And Buddy Holly probably way back in 1959.
Absolutely,
So that would have been it. Then you're talking about...
I just interrupt you there, Mike. They say that a lot of people say Elvis, King of Rock and Roll. No way. It was Buddy Holly.
They all...
A lot of people all go back to Buddy Holly.
I say that's probably true because Buddy Holly would be more rock and roll than Elvis in that sense,
I might dispute, but...
absolutely. But I would have been... I missed out a little bit because I was at a boarding school from 1963 to 1968. But the minute I got home, we had TV at that stage, and so I was absolutely tuned into everything. But so I'd have gone really from probably the Shadows, Cliff Richard and the Shadows and things like this here. Then the Beatles and the Stone. I remember going to see my sister took me to Belfast. That was a big trip. And we paid 10 and 6 for the top seat to see A Hard Day's Night in 1964.
Oh, wow.
Absolutely. And that was expensive, really expensive. And then you wanted to be a Beatle, then the Rolling Stones came along. Then I was a big Kinks man, really massive.
You're talking about
I wanted to be Dave Davies. His hair was split down just up at there. And I had this curly hair and I wanted to change it. I wanted to be Dave Davies. And then I came home in the summer of 65. And from the boarding school, and I heard the Byrds, Mr. Tambourine Man.
Yeah,
that is just unbelievable.
He's the original.
It's Bob Dylan's song. Absolutely, it's Bob Dylan's song. Yeah. But they
made it though.
They made it.
There's not many covers that are better than the original. Yeah.
Well, Bob Dylan,
definitely.
I saw Bob Dylan, and don't get me wrong, Bob Dylan, I'm sure he's a great hero, and he's phenomenal. He's really great.
There's a movie out about him. No, just coming out. So.
But I saw him at Thomond Park in Limerick in 2010, and honestly, it took me 12 minutes to realise he's singing "Oh, Lay Lady Lay," because
I know exactly what you're saying.
I know. Please, just
honestly, Martin,
it was crap.
I know exactly what you're saying.
It was
so I went to see Dylan. So a big Dylan fan. I went to see Dylan at Wembley Arena in early 2000s now, and what I'm expecting is the Bob Dylan you hear on the albums with the harmonica out, he can't even blow the harmonica this time. I was like, where's the harmonica, Bob? And I was exactly the same as you. So I was there. But back to the question.
Yeah. So
you put that needle on a record. Which first one was it?
Okay, so I got must have been about 1967. We had my sister bought a record, which was great to buy the records. She was a couple of years older than me, Bridge, and she bought a record. She was into the music. It was lovely to buy the record, but we had no record player. So I said, that's not really good, that really. But it was this On the Dock of the Bay by Otis Redding.
Oh, Otis Redding, yeah.
And I thought, well, it's not really what I wanted to listen to, but it's obviously one of my great songs.
The test of time,
absolutely, one of the great songs. So eventually, when we got the record, but what would have been the first song? I would have said that she bought the best of the Bee Gees, and I'm talking about not the Bee Gees of 1977. I'm talking about 68, when Robin Gibb.
Wow,
Robin Gibb is just one of the most fun. What?
I need some help for this year.
Right,
hold on. Oh yeah, I remember the Bee Gees of the 70s, 80s.
Robin Gibb sings a song called "I Can't See Nobody." So you get it on YouTube. And he's 18 years of age. He's buck teeth. He's wearing a big jacket. It's 15 sizes too big for him. He's 18 years of age. He's phenomenal. Yeah. He's absolutely phenomenal. Awesome. Honestly, Robin Gibb was one of the great singers. Really, absolutely. Okay. Parry Gibb did all of that, the high voice stuff later on. But the Bee Gees and who did New York Mining Disaster, Massachusetts, all of those songs. They wrote the songs. They wrote those songs. They were kids. It's phenomenal. Honestly,
he's awesome. Absolutely. I've seen that as well. Doing a bit of research, early Fleetwood Mac.
Oh, Peter Green. Absolutely. You know the band and Danny Kerwin.
Yeah,
those boys.
Yeah. I know all Fleetwood Mac, but once you get into the later Fleetwood Mac, then you go back to the early Fleetwood Mac, and I'm like, wow, this is amazing.
Absolutely.
You know, the blues.
They did Albatross, which is the instrumental. Then they did Oh Well.
Yeah.
Can't tell about the cheap band men.
No, Need Your Love So Bad.
Absolutely. Green Man Alicia.
I
remember on a few alcohol-fueled nights that we had together, you always used to break into the Oasis hit.
Yeah, right. Okay, that you mean
Don't Look Back in Anger.
Great song. Great song, great anthem. Phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal.
Did you kind of sum up your philosophy of your career?
Very clever, you. Very clever. I knew you'd have to come up with some thickhead remark. You know? Don't put that in.
So I'm going question. Next question.
Let me rephrase that.
No, next question, Martin. Okay, you have one song, and it's really tough because Stuart Pearce found this tough as well. You have one song. I have one. I remember. I'm 18 years old. You may not know this song, but I buy a record from the shop in Blackburn, as I keep saying on this podcast, back to the and and it's Welcome to the Jungle by Guns N' Roses, and the riff comes on, and I'm like, wow, this blew me away. So it's really tough because there's millions and millions of songs out there, but that one for me always goes, that's me, and that was my properly hair rock and roll roots.
Yeah.
What's your one song?
Gosh, that's really...
Yeah. And it's hard because you don't want to let your other songs down.
Yeah, no, absolutely. that's
really the tough
good.
one, you know.
I bet you when I come out of this, I think, oh, why did they go with that? We'll just see.
Or a couple, if you need to.
Right. That's a really good point. Can I think about that?
Absolutely.
Somebody else?
Absolutely. Okay, we'll go on to the last question everyone gets. Okay. And this is, I don't know, best live performance you've ever been to?
Best live performance? Yeah. Well, there were two.
It's not football games, this is music.
Yeah,
I'm only joking.
Okay, right. 1974, November 1974, Birmingham Odeon, Jethro Tull. Jethro Tull coming on to, so small venue. They had the 1971 Aqualung. Brilliant album, great song off it, great single off it. 1972 Thick as a Brick, great stuff. 73 Passion Play, got mauled for Passion Play. They got absolutely mauled and they wanted to pack it in. Remember Jethro Tull were vying with Led Zeppelin to be the biggest band in America at the time. Yeah. But in England, trying to get through it, or trying to get the sort of audiences. Anyway, so they said they were going to pack in. Anyway, they didn't. And they did this album called... War Child, and so anyway, they're on at the Odeon, and so I'm tuned in now. So I've got in with my brother and another Scottish footballer who played for Nottingham Forest at the time. So we travelled over to Nottingham. I just bought a car at the time, so we travelled over. And so a small venue, so it's pitch dark. The only thing you can see in the stage is the wee red light, the little red light that's coming from one of the machines.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah,
and then all the sirens going right round there, and the next thing you think, what's this all about? And it's pitch dark, and the next thing you know, there's just a big puff of smoke and light coming up, and Martin Barr playing guitar, and then they go to the piano, bang, bang, and then Tull comes on, and it's just
amazing music,
fantastic,
absolutely
fantastic, brilliant, and the best, and I went, Shirley and I went to see Thin Lizzy Sheffield Town Hall.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm going to, it must be 1976, 77. And so anyway, we're in this hall. It's a nice hall. And we're about four or five rows from the front. Decent enough seats. And I think, oh, great. They come on to Jailbreak. And I'm still 4 or 5 seats there, but now I'm not. I'm at the back because everybody's at the front. And Jailbreak, brilliant. So those are the two.
Phil Lynott, live is
phenomenal.
Wow,
phenomenal.
That's
absolutely. So I'm glad of that. So I'm glad.
Sorry, guess his way of getting away from the pressures of football. Obviously, is to sing the rock band. Mm-hmm. I know that your release from the world of football was Crime and Criminology.
It wasn't really a release. I love the music and I'd do that there. It was something I was really interested in, and that stemmed away back from a case in not too far from here, believe it or not, in a case
Hanratty.
James Hanratty was hanged in 1962 for the murder of an attempted murder of a lady. And murder of the man who were in this he had wound down the window in a place not too far from Maidenhead and taken them on this surreal journey, finally shot him, and she was left for dead, shot her, but she survived. She was and anyway. And they finally caught him. They were looking for another man, first of all. Remember, in 1961, 62, I'm a young fellow going to primary school in Ireland, because the name Hanratty had significance. It was an unusual name, and it was kind of Irish at the same time. And my mother was really heavily into listening to the case, because Hanratty had said that he was innocent, and that they'd maintained this innocence the whole way through. and he was hanged, so still maintaining his innocence. Anyway, that was 62. So fast forward to 1969, his father's still trying to clear his name posthumously the whole time, fighting every single year for something, and he's in Marble Arch. And he's got a big placard down saying, "My son is innocent. He was in Rill at the same time as the murder had taken place. Therefore, he couldn't have done it." And who's standing beside him? John Lennon. John Lennon standing beside him, trying to give it the publicity for the case.
No way.
Yeah, and so my interest in crime has come from that distance. Unfortunately, there was some DNA left over from the whole thing, and they dug up his body, and it looks as if he did do it. Okay. Which is really...
It looks as if... DNA is like millions to one chance. What do you mean? We used to argue about this. And I was driving my car somewhere one day, many years later, and I heard the story about the DNA evidence. I couldn't wait to ring her.
Oh, you couldn't wait to ring me?
Yeah, I bet. But I think Mike, the fascination. I was the same when I was young, and we the Yorkshire Ripper was and Sutcliffe and that. And I think that there's a fascination. Yeah, there's a fascination of true crime. Especially I think we talked again last podcast about this being on the edge. This and what music can give you. And I think it's this chaos, this theory of just insanity really, that you want to look into and say why why do people do this, or why has that happened. And I remember Mum wouldn't go out because the Ripper had done obviously in Lum Lane in Bradford, and then he made a crossover to Manchester.
That's correct.
And there was a killing there, and so my family being in Lancashire, and so I'm sort of understanding of your true crime thing. It's quite a macabre subject sometimes, but you also, it's very interesting, and no wonder all these true crime channels are on the TV all the time, and my missus is forever watching these, and it's like one day I think I might be a victim. Am I coming on and thinking, is she finding ways to see me off? But no, it's really fascinating, and the music connection with John Lennon being there that day.
We could have gone on for hours. There is a time limit.
There's a question yet to answer.
Go on then.
Yes, is the song.
Oh, the song.
Everyone has been.
Come back to that.
He wanted some thinking time, and all we've done is talk. So.
Yeah. Yes. That would be, let's see.
Any song that takes you back somewhere, Mark?
Oh, loads of songs take me back. I'll tell you what I watched a lot of films as a kid growing up as well too. Lots of films, and in the 60s I was fascinated by the 60s here in England. Really fascinated. And if I think if there was a song that probably captured the 60s for me in my mind would be the Kinks and Waterloo Sunset. It probably would be obviously great song, but the very thought, this boy just sitting looking out over. So but I would put that there, and then I'll walk out of here and think, no, that wouldn't be my top 10.
I think it's pretty cool. The Kinks, they went on to influence so many people, rock and roll, America and England, the Davis brothers obviously don't get on very well, but
I know, absolutely.
Yeah, but they come up with some amazing records.
And I haven't mentioned a band that I absolutely adored. All right, and I think that of all my bands, I think the Kinks would go pretty well close to being the top. But if I really, the Who were brilliant, fantastic. I won't get fooled again as one of my top 20 of all time. But the band, the Small Faces, I think, and I was into the Small Faces really big. And they did, and I know they did it. Itchy Park's great song. Yeah. They did a number of great songs. But interestingly, even the song that Stevie Marriott absolutely hated because the production to put it out when he was away, but it's just a Lazy Sunday. Oh, when he sings it like a cockney, wouldn't it be nice to get and then for 1 minute he just sings it in his proper voice, and fantastic, honestly, and he hated it. He hated it because they were only messing around in the studios and doing it. Only messing around, didn't like it. Then he wanted to bring who was it from the lad from the Herd, the lead singer from The Herd in 67, 68. When he bring him into the band, the boys didn't really want it. Then they broke up. He went to Humble Pie.
Yeah, Humble
and
Pie.
then the next thing, you know, they bring in Rod Stewart, and then Rod disappears after a few songs. Ronnie Wood.
Ronnie Wood.
So, so
amazing. Well, I'll have to say, the Kinks, Small Faces.
Yeah.
That's not a bad way to end this.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Gaelic footballer, soccer player, insurance salesman, could have been a QC if things had turned out slightly differently.
It wasn't that bright. No.
I think you'd do yourself an injustice by saying that.
No, wasn't.
Martin, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Not at all. This is great.
Thank you so much again.
Not at all.
It's been another wonderful edition of our new podcast, Shall We Sing a Song for You? Can't wait for the next one. Don't forget, you can listen and watch on X, on Facebook, and on Instagram. Thanks for listening to this one. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did.